Good morning, everybody. As we go to the chitas of the day, today is Wednesday, the fourth reading of the portion, and we go to chapter 17 of the portion of Koirach, chapter 17, verse number 9. So we are holding in Milda's drama right after the story of Korach. The Jewish people were unhappy with what happened to Korach and his entire group. That they all were punished and they died. Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe Aleinu. They came to Moshe Rabbeinu to complain, and they were ready to they were angry. So Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe, and God spoke to Moshe, and He said in verse number 10, stand aside from this congregation. I will consume them in an instant. And they fell upon the face of it. So verse 11, Moses said to Aaron, take the pan, put upon a fire, from the altar, because a plague started to happen in the Jewish nation, and put upon it incense. Go quickly. Go quickly to the congregation. Bring forgiveness to them. Because a wrath went out before God. The big plague started. Rashi says, how did Moshe Rabbeinu know this? How did Moses know this trick? To tell Aaron to do this. The secret was given over to him by the angel of death when he went up to heaven. And he went up to heaven, he met the angel of death, and the angel of death told him that this is what you can do. The ketores is something that saves people. That the incense can hold back a plague. And this is all brought in the Gemara Masechta Shabbos. Verse number 12, and Aaron took the pan. He ran in the midst of the assembly. And behold, the plague had begun. And he put it in its incense, and it brought atonement to the people. And he stood between the dead and the living. And the Magefa, the plague, ceased. We need to have Aaron today. So Rashi says, he took hold of the angel of death and held him against his will. The angel said to him, allow me to accomplish my mission. God sent me on a mission. Why are you stopping me? And Aaron said to him, Moses commanded me to stop you. He said to him, you're Moses. Moses stopped you. I'm the messenger of God. And you're a messenger of Moses. So who's going to stop who? That to him, Aaron said to Moses, does not say anything in his own volition, but only in the bidding of the Almighty. And if you do not believe me, the Holy One, blessed be He, and Moses at the entrance of the tent of meeting, go and visit them. Come with me and ask. So this is the meaning of the statement. Aaron returned to Moses. Because he came back to Moses with the angel of death. Another interpretation, says, why with incense? Because the Israelites were slandering and verifying the incense, saying that it was a deadly poison. Through it, Nadav and Avihu died. Through it, 250 people were burned. This is like a dangerous thing. The Holy One, blessed be He, you'll see that it will stop a plague. And it is sin that causes death, not incense that causes death, but actually the sin of Nadav and Avihu and these 250 people that sinned. But ultimately the plague did affect the Jewish people, and the dead in the plague was 14,700. Besides the 250 that died in the story of Korach. Verse number 15, Vayashav Adam al Pesach el Moed, and Aaron returned to Moses at the entrance of the tent of meeting. As Rashi said before, he came back with the angel of death. Vatotzar HaMagefa, and the plague stopped. And that ends the Chumash of the day. That's it. That's easy. Okay, so we go to the Tanya of the day. We go to the Tanya of the day. Today is the 29th day of the month of Sivan. Tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh. 29th day of the month of Sivan. We are holding in Shara Yichud Ve'emunah, the 9th chapter of Shara Yichud Ve'emunah, the portal of oneness and unity. We're learning all about the concept of unity according to Chassidut. What is the aspect of unity? What is the meaning of unity? The Alter Rebbe is going back to the aspect of wisdom. Everything starts to the concept of Chachma. But even the highest level of Chachma of a human being, or even more than a human being, of creation in general, is far, far from the concept of Chachma of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of God Himself. Because His Chachma is totally different than our Chachma. And the Alter Rebbe continues. So, if God is far beyond, how does God expect us to know Him? But in so much as it's within the power of created beings to comprehend only a descent from the level of wisdom, which is their beginning, to the level of action, which is the lowest level. So since we can only comprehend this concept only through explaining the descent of levels from wisdom to action, so we have some kind of a yardstick to give an explanation to concepts. Therefore, we say that the relationship to the Holy One, blessed be He, the level of wisdom, is considered exactly as a level of action. We use this example simply because there's no greater descent in the realm of a human experience than the descent from wisdom to action. So we're using it as an example, but not that the example actually fits this the story, because the Eibishter selfless is far beyond wisdom and action. So we give an example. We can understand the difference as humans between the difference between wisdom and action. So if we can understand it, we give that analogy. What does that mean? That's to say, that God Himself is high and exalted, the very and very greatly elevated above the level of wisdom. And therefore, it's not at all appropriate to Him, anything that pertains to wisdom. To say God is wise is self-understood, not a true statement. Because God is far above wisdom, our comprehension of wisdom. In a very lofty and sublime form. Meaning, even if by doing so we mean to express how He transcends wisdom. For example, to say of Him that is beyond the capacity of any higher or lower creature to comprehend His wisdom or His essence. So even in a negative reference to wisdom is inappropriate. To say God is above wisdom, why don't we understand what that means? Why do we understand how to express, really? If we want to talk about how to express what God is, what would you say? What would a human being say what God is? You cannot say what God is. You can't even say what God isn't. Because God is above anything what is and what you think is and what you think it isn't. Because anything that you say, that I say, is based on my intellect, and my intellect is very finite. Again, this is why the Gemara says that a person should not praise God, but only the way he's praised in the Torah, in Tanakh. That's the way we praise HaKadosh Baruch. We use the Torah as its praise. Because nobody can praise HaKadosh Baruch. Nobody knows how to praise God. For comprehension pertains and applies to a matter of wisdom and intellect, about which one can say that it can or cannot be understood because of the profundity of the concept. So everything, I cannot understand. Who am I? I cannot understand. Let's say even the biggest, smartest guy, I cannot understand. If you do, you can't understand. Every human being is a finite entity. So what's the big deal to say a finite cannot understand? You're finite. How can you understand everything? Which person can say understand everything? It's impossible. It's impossible. That's why even today you have specialties. Specialties. Everybody has their specialty. And they're, what they think they know the most. But even in their situation, nobody knows the truth of anything. How does anybody know the essence of anything? In any aspect of life, whether it's in medicine, whether it's in science, everything is you can go deeper, and thank God. So it's never ending. Why? Because our wisdom is very limited. It's only limited to the wisdom that every person has in their head, in their brain. So therefore, what are you going to say about which person can say no? He knows everything. But however, concerning God, the Almighty One, concerning the Holy One, blessed be He, who transcends intellect and wisdom. But to say God is wisdom is limiting. To say God is intellect is limiting. God transcends wisdom and intellect and emotions. He transcends it all. It is not at all appropriate to say that one cannot comprehend him because of the profundity of God. For he's not within the realm of comprehension. You can say I can't comprehend something when it's above me. That's when the thing is in a level of comprehension that's above me. But God is not in the level of comprehension. So you can't say I cannot comprehend. It's not a comprehension. How can you say I can't comprehend when it's not even in the concept of comprehension? So therefore, you cannot say after that, but just to try to explain, you cannot say it in a positive or a negative way. I cannot say I understand God, or I understand God what I don't understand. To say what you don't understand, you don't understand what? I don't understand medicine. I'm not capable of understanding the concept of medicine. Medicine is an understanding. There's a concept in the world of medicine. I don't understand it, but it's there. My brain doesn't understand this concept, but it's there. The intellect, the concept, and the aspect of medicine concepts are there. But the English state cannot say that I don't understand. I understand what I don't understand, or because I don't understand him. English is above understanding. He is not within the realm of comprehension at all. We don't believe in a God. Was expression of a great sage. I think of Nachum, the Mendel Kuss, who said, "A God that I understand is a God I don't want to believe in." The English is not a concept that could be truly comprehended. So therefore, love, he who states that it is impossible to comprehend him, is like one who says of a lofty and profound concept that it cannot be touched with their hands because of the depth of the concept. If somebody would say that it cannot touch with their hands because of the lofty of the concept, that's why he doesn't comprehend, because he can't touch it. Whoever hears this will mock him, because the sense of touch refers to, that implies to only physical objects. So how can he say, "Oh, I cannot comprehend because I can't touch it"? You can't touch it. Comprehension is not something you touch with your hands. Comprehension is something you understand with your brain. So you cannot comprehend it because you can't comprehend, not because you can't touch it. So you can't comprehend God because God's not comprehension, not because he's higher than you, he's smarter than you. That's the mistake people make. They say, "Oh, God, I cannot comprehend because God is smarter." God is the God of all gods. That's what the nations of the world said. The Abish is the God of all gods. He's a superpower. And he's too super for me. That's stupid. I can't comprehend God because God is not comprehend. He's not in the level, he's not in the concept of comprehension. The Kocha Mamish, exactly so. The levels of intellect comprehension in the relationship to the Holy One Besed is actually a physical. That's exactly the point. Any comprehension by a human being, by a created entity, is all to God like touching with your hands. So to God, everything is the same. It's like I see a gashmis. It's like touching with your hands. So so God, our comprehension is like the guy who says, I only can have a comprehension things that I touch. That's why Chassidus says that the Abish to everything is like a physical. The spiritual and the physical is all physical. It's all like a physical thing. The God, his thought and his action are the same, because it's all created entities. It's all creation, and God's the creator. So even chachma, wisdom, and a physical and a see an action, to the Abish, it's all action. To us, there is wisdom and there's action. Wisdom, I understand with my mind, and action, I touch with my hands. Two different realities. Two different realities. And then just like I can comprehend that intellect is something I can't touch, and physical thing I do touch with my hands, and they're two different realities. One is more spiritual, one is more physical. Because by me, my intellect is like something that's above my action. To God, intellect is like an action. Because both intellect and an action are both limited entities. And God is infinite, and therefore they're both like an action. This is you have to again try to read this again and again and again to comprehend what the Alter Rebbe is trying to teach us. That we cannot put God in even in a lofty box. We don't want to maybe put God. Don't think that when God says do not have another God but me, means that you shouldn't make only an idol. That's a God. You cannot put God in any kind of box, whether it's lofty, whether it's physical. Because God, both the lofty and the physical, are both physical. And therefore, Don't make God into a lofty concept, and don't make God into a physical concept. God is above both. And therefore, since God is above both, therefore to God everything is equal. So even the comprehension, even the comprehension of the superior and the spiritual intelligence of the higher worlds, and even the level of the supernal wisdom of the world of Atzilus, and the highest level of wisdom in Kabbalah, which gives life to them all. The wisdom of the world of Atzilus, the highest level of wisdom, which even Kabbalistic great teachers trembled when they spoke about the wisdom of the world of emanation. It's considered so in relation to the Eivishter. It's like a physical wisdom. By God, the level of wisdom, the world of Atzilus, and the wisdom of the Zalman bukiet is both physical. One's a little bigger, one's a little smaller. But they're both physical. And to infinity, what's the difference big and small? There's no big and small to an infinite concept. There's no difference between big and small to God. That's a very important thing. There's no difference between big and small. That's what the Rebbe, Lubavitch Rebbe, always say. There's no thing a small Jew. There's no difference between Moshe Rabbeinu and me as being a Yid. There is a difference in my wisdom. I'm a small wisdom, very small. Moshe Rabbeinu was a big wise man. But to God, there's no difference between a big and a small. Higher and lower. There's no such thing as higher and lower by God. There's no difference between wide and it. To God, it's all creation. And to a concept, to the Eibishter who's infinite, anything finite is already a created entity, is already so far from him. What's the difference? In the Siv, as it says, Kulam B'chachma Sis has written, he made them all with wisdom. All creation is rooted within the wisdom of Atzilus. Nevertheless, even the supernal wisdom of Atzilus is considered an action in relationship to God. For God transcends it infinitely. Not God transcended because he's greater than the world of Atzilus. God is infinite. We cannot say on something that is infinite, he's greater. It doesn't make sense. The word even greater to infinity, to unlimited. Greater is when you have, from the world, the wisdom of the world of Bria, Atzilus is greater. So there's a concept of greater. But to infinity, there's no greater. Everything is nothing to infinity. There's no such thing. You can't go from, you cannot, that's why you cannot go from infinity to finite. There's no connection between an infinite concept and a finite concept. Because there's no way to connect the two. It is impossible to say that God can or cannot be apprehended through intellect. You can't say that. God cannot be apprehended. What does that mean? Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. That would make sense. I cannot comprehend the greater knowledge. Okay, that makes sense. I cannot comprehend the greater knowledge. But if I can't comprehend God, it doesn't make sense either. It doesn't make sense. It's not apprehendable. If so much as intellect and wisdom are not at all the means by which God can be grasped. But how can any wisdom grasp God? How can any wisdom, which is finite, grasp God? That's infinite. So you can say, I cannot grasp a God. That doesn't make sense. How are you supposed to grasp God who's infinite and you're finite? It's impossible. If so, why do you call God wise? If so, let's go back. If what I just said over and over and over again try to impress on me that God is above wisdom, so why do we call God wise? For why the Holy One, blessed be he, has been called wise in the Torah. He's called wise. Makosiv in the verse. And why did the sages use the word wisdom? This is because he is the source of wisdom. Because everything emanates from him. Wisdom emanates from God. God's not wisdom, it emanates from him. Everything comes from him. That's why my neshama also is a piece of God. Because my neshama and your neshama emanates from him. That's what the Alter Rebbe said in the second chapter of Tanya, that every Jew has a piece of God within him. Is he God? No. It emanates from him. Therefore, we have a piece of God within us. And so to every other thing that we call God kind, because kindness emanates from him. Everything emanates from him. Everything comes from him. That's why we call God is kind and God is chachma, because it emanates, comes from him. And likewise, we call God merciful and we call God kind because he is the source of mercy and kindness. Without God, we don't have it. So therefore, true kindness is God. Therefore, true wisdom is God. Therefore, true soul is God. And so too, likewise, all the emotive attributes. God is referred to by the names of other attributes because he is their source. For they all proceed and emanate from him. And since without God, you don't have kindness. Without God, you don't have mercy. Without God, you don't have wisdom. So therefore, we say God is wise. God is kindness. We are boxing God in the level of kindness. Because we don't understand what God is. But that God is kindness because kindness emanates from him. The manner and the nature that flows, emanation, how and what. How the intellect and motive attributes emanate from him. Now the question would be, how do they emanate from him? Now you have a question. The intellectual motive attributes emanate from him, which totally transcends them. And exactly what they are, for after they have emanated from him, they are wholly united with him, is known to the maskilim. Maskilim, to those that have great seichel, great wisdom. I know he says savants, and that's a fancy English word. The maskilim means those that are extremely, extremely smart. As it's number 3 over, you see number 3, the Rebbe noted by the Rebbe. This is explained at greater length in many places of Chassidus. This concept of how ultimately these things emanate from God. They all come from him, wisdom and kindness and severity and all the and mercy, etc. All the 10 spheres, which the Arizal says are an emanation of God. So it emanated from him, so that humans will be able to have an understanding of God's emanation, not of God's essence. So we can understand what comes from God, and the way it comes ultimately down to us in a very, very practical way, because to God God is truth, godliness penetrates the whole world. It goes from the lofty to the most lowest, and that's where the Torah is compared to water. that comes from very high and goes to very low, because God is something that can penetrate and go through the most lofty to the most to the most simple. So God is the most lofty, and his emanation. That's why in Chassidut, God, we call the concept of energy God Or, light. So you have a light that comes from the most highest to the most lowest. So God's emanation, God's God's energy, but ultimately God's light and God's energy is all God. It's his emanation that comes and ultimately penetrates all the levels of the world. Let's complete the Tanya of the day. Today is the 29th day of the month of Sivan, and the Tillim of the day is chapter 140 to chapter 144. Chapter 140 to chapter 144, and you would have done the chitas of the day. I want to invite you all to a beautiful Friday night dinner we're having at Chabad with a guest speaker this Shabbos. My brother, all the way from Rialto Booker from Massachusetts, making a dinner in honor of Gimel Tammuz, the third day of Tammuz, which is the Yom Elula, the day that the Rebbe Neshama went high, and continues to have an influence ultimately still in this world. And I want to invite everybody to come to the Friday night dinner. It's going to be really a wonderful evening and a Mitzvah Shabbos. We're going to continue. We're going to have a beautiful luncheon in honor of the Rebbe again. And my brother will be that day to Fabring. And so if you want to participate in the Friday night meal, that is something you need to book. I hope that you can do this today. You call the office 487-2934 or go online and book. Make sure to book this in today so that we have everybody to be able to come to the Friday night meal. If you have any financial issues to pay, you can call me up 487-2934 and we will work that out too. Have a wonderful and beautiful, happy and healthy day. We'll see you all here tomorrow at 8 o'clock where we continue the chitas of the day.